What's up, buttercups? Welcome back to my channel. Today's book review is Sociopath, a memoir by Patric Gagne. The title says it all. I don't even need to explain all that much, but I will in a non-spoilerly review as promised by the title, because I think you should read this book if this sounds interesting to you. It's not that heavy. And I think that this is a really solid beginning for people's interest about sociopathy and sociopaths, because Patric holds a doctorate in psychology and she is a professionally diagnosed sociopath. We start out when she is a child, and she knew from the beginning that something was different from her because other people felt things deeply and she kind of felt or didn't feel at all. And throughout this memoir, we are trying to figure out how, with her, to go about society, to mask, to figure out what's wrong and can we fix it. And I think that's really fascinating because, as she says in this book and in the many interviews she has done, she is extremely privileged and she did break many laws, but she was not caught. And usually that's when people figure out that they are sociopaths or antisocial personality disorders or psychopaths. But she was not caught, and she had to figure out all of this up to a certain point by herself. And then she finally went to school, and then she was learning that sociopathy is not really well known. Like, it was in the DSM for a while, but then it was taken out. And how do you test for sociopathy? You have to break the law basically many times, and then you have to be in jail or prison, and then there's other things that are indicators, and then it's like, okay, so we're going to test you for psychopathy and or antisocial personality disorder, and sociopathy maybe, but like it's not in the DSM, so you're like the other two things. And how do you even test sociopathy when it's been taken out of the DSM? Well, you use a psychopathy checklist. And what does that mean? It's for psychopaths, not sociopaths. So it's a very interesting memoir because we're going along with her inside her mind, because this is a memoir first person. And I know a little extra about psychology and therapy and all that stuff because I've been in therapy since 4 years old. I'm not a sociopath, but I have many different mental illnesses and neurological disorders. And my mother is a psychotherapist, so I just grew up with that, and it's always been interesting to me. And as I was reading this book, I was like, oh, there's some key things that some of my fellow students kind of show. I don't know where they are. Actually, I know where some of them are. I was in behavioral special education, so that's even more insight and more life experience. And if you don't know what that is, for whatever reason, I totally understand. It's very niche. Behavioral special education is where, to put it simply, children or teenagers that are acting up for whatever reason cannot be in a regular class, so they're in a smaller class, and there are a lot of strict rules, and there are like behavioral contracts that you have to follow, and there's also behavioral IEPs that must be followed and all that stuff. And I was placed in behavioral special education at the ripe age of like 9. I was in 3rd grade, and once you're in it, you can't get out. So I was in there from 3rd grade all the way up to 12th grade when I graduated. And so my acting out my violence was from childhood trauma, and then that was resolved in a criminal case. And after a few years, I did settle down, but I couldn't get out. So by the time high school hit, I was one of the few girls in the special education classes. It's usually like 1 to 3, and I can still name off all the other girls because it just wasn't a thing that girls are usually in. It's usually boys, and a lot of them were trying to get into gangs, or they were already in gangs, and this is in and around DC, so you know what gangs I'm talking about. And they were doing lots of drugs, they were heavily drinking, they were selling drugs, or they were trying to get into selling drugs. There was just a lot of criminality involved. And I was reading this book, and she said she wasn't caught. There was no tests done on her, not even like basic tests that they do when you're placed in behavioral special education. So she just had to go through her childhood kind of on her own and didn't figure out anything until she got to college and did the psychology classes. But I was just reading this and I was like, ooh, there's a few that might have been a sociopath, or there were a couple that were like, you're absolutely dangerous and I'm not looking at you, let alone speaking to you or being near you. And that's just, however, kind of normal. That was like a normal thing for me during my teenage years. And there were some kids, even like in elementary school and middle school, that were like, something's off with you. Like, it's not even just you're behaving aggressively because like of trauma, like what happened to me and what I was doing. It's like you're acting out and you're punching people and you're like doing certain things because you love it. There's a difference, right? And that is what Patric goes over, and a lot of other things in this memoir. And I think it's really fascinating. When she grows up, she works for the music industry. And she's like, there are a lot of messed up people in the music industry, or just like Hollywood in general, because she goes to college / works in and around LA. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, even without knowing definitions or specific names or anything like that regarding psychology, a lot of people just intuitively know something's not right with X amount of people that they see like on the red carpet, or they see in the tabloids, or like they just see things and it's a little off. Now, of course, before anyone jumps on me, tabloids are messed up, 100%. Interviews, only a small snapshot, totally get it. Though there are things just like, there are hints that you see over years where it's like, something's a little off. And if you ever visit LA, actually that's more of an accurate depiction. Yeah, something's just weird. And a lot of them mask, but a lot of them don't. And so she is also talking about in this book, masking, how to overcome that feeling of just offness. And she really goes deep into what at least sociopaths, and she's a high functioning sociopath, so don't think that this is the only way that sociopaths are. And she says that many times. She's high functioning sociopath, so it's different, and she can only speak to her high functioning sociopathy. But for her, it's like a buildup of anxiety over months, sometimes weeks, depending, but then she gets to a certain point and it's like there's screaming in her head, there's anxiety, screaming, do something or else I'm gonna snap. And so like her criminal behavior was like breaking and entering into deserted or empty houses and just sitting there for a couple hours. And it's like, yes, you broke the law, but you know what? At least you're not killing people. No. Which is kind of what she said in this book, so I'm not BSing. It's kind of like she figured out a way to, like, yeah, she's breaking the law, but then how do you keep that in a nice little container and not do horrible stuff? Because there is a point in this novel early on where she does hurt another child. She's like 8, 7, around there. She's in elementary school. And she does hurt another child because that screaming in her head got too much, and then she just kind of snapped and she stabbed a child with a pencil pen. And then she saw what was happening. She's like, oh my God, that's absolutely bad. Like, no, we're not ever doing that again. Absolutely not. That's not how we work in society. But that control was gone, and she lost it. And she, at least, you know, of what she's saying in this memoir, she never hurt someone else again. She just like stole cars and broke into empty houses and just kind of sat there and all that stuff. There were some times where it was like she was borderline stalking someone. And then she's like, girl, you know it's bad, but it's making you feel great. And there's this other person, you know, in the music industry she kind of befriends that's not a good influence on her. And make good choices, Patric. Hold on. Make good choices. You're not doing that right now. But, you know, she does figure out by the end of this memoir that more things need to be done about sociopathy and how to help. And she, as a high-functioning sociopath that also does not have a criminal record and has figured out on her own that she needs to go forth and, one, write this memoir because she feels like other sociopaths, like with a criminal record and locked away, can't necessarily do that. But her, as a privileged white woman that doesn't have a bad background, really, she did break the law many times, but she wasn't caught, has a PhD in psychology. She can be the voice of first saying in a memoir, this is me, and I want to tell my story for other people, and that she is working or already worked through how to at least help, if not treat, other sociopaths. And, you know, I appreciate that. Why, logically, would you just leave a bunch of people behind and not help them in any sort of way? This is very early on in Patric's career. I look forward to seeing her research, studies, the peer reviews, and all of that stuff that she worked on for her PhD. Now, some people are saying that it is not an accredited college. From what I looked up, it is. So there's more to come. Absolutely, there's more to come. And I'm intrigued. I didn't rate this memoir because I don't rate memoirs. I think that's really like odd for me to do. Also, the content, I didn't really want to do that. But I do recommend Sociopath, a memoir, if you're interested in sociopathy and where Patric is possibly going with her research on this topic. Thank you so much for watching my book review on Sociopath, a memoir. I hope to see you in my other videos. Please comment with your thoughts or any questions that you have. I might or might not be able to answer them. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.